Welcome back to News in Focus. Let me welcome my next guest. She's the president of COSATU, of course, which is part of the Tripartite Alliance alongside the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party. Coming to us from Durban, I'd like to welcome Zingiswa Losi. Ms. Losi, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Patel, and greetings to the viewers and the listeners of Hilaal TV.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Ms. Losi, let's start off, of course, with where are women now in the year 2025 in terms of leadership positions within South Africa?
Look, one wants to say that we think we have made progress in relation to women representation, in particular in the sphere of government. We must also at least give credit to the ANC because they have been consistent in ensuring that the quota system of 50% is carried forward when they put up the cabinet ministers and ensure that there is that 50-50 representation. But we must also acknowledge that whilst we do say there's progress, there is some setbacks, particularly when you look into the corporate side of things and in the social institutions like the trade union movement itself, or be it in other society organizations, where we will see that in the corporate ladder, in big business, you will find that in the executive positions, it is still male dominated and women are found at the bottom of the ladder. So one believes that there is progress, but whilst we still acknowledge that progress, a lot of work needs to be done.
Ms. Losi, globally, you are one of the very few leaders within trade union organizations. When I did my research, I stand to be corrected, 5. You're one of the 5 that are actually leading trade unions within the globe. What does this mean for you, taking up such a massive mantle? Of course, number one, there's the plight of the workers that you need to obviously go ahead and take care of its interests. And number two, of course, you are taking on what we see right now from a global perspective, this rise and this continuous rise of capitalism. So talk to us about that.
Indeed. Firstly, I must say that it is an honor and a privilege for me to be given this opportunity to lead such a big trade union federation in Southern Africa and in the African continent. And I must say that I don't take that privilege lightly. I do understand that I do not just represent myself, but I carry the interest and the aspirations of many women that do not have a voice, that are not as privileged to be given such an opportunity. So wherever that I go, wherever that I am, I understand that when I'm given a platform to raise issues that are affecting workers and the working class in general, I always carry the aspirations of the downtrodden women, women in the rural areas, women in the urban cities that are still languishing in poverty, that are still hoping that they will be able to find themselves waking up in a country, in a world that has respect for the existence and of women in our country, that they are not just entities, but they are also beings that have a right to live, that are respected and are protected from gender-based violence and many ills that we see in our community. So it is such an honor, but I also understand that the responsibility that I have in carrying the voices of those that are unable to be heard also puts quite a remarkable responsibility on my shoulders.
Ms. Losi, when I spoke to Prof. Madonsela before you, this question was asked to her, what are the main challenges for women who want to enter major leadership positions? And she said, as much as we need to be upbeat as women, it's a space that men need to also allow for. Is that the same viewpoint that you share?
Definitely, I would 100% agree with Professor Madonsela. You know, I've always carried the view that in as much as we are saying women must take up the positions, men must create the space. Men must create the space. You see, sometimes we are comfortable in putting women to lead, but there is no, we don't set a path that ensures that this is not just the beginning and an end of a particular woman that has been given opportunity, but we are ensuring that there is another layer of leadership, but also the path to that leadership is being created. What we see is that as soon as we break the ceiling, we put a woman in, men then come in immediately to say, when she leaves, we are taking over. So it means it is just for putting a rose in a vase, you know, and when that vase and when that rose fades off, then you are not ready. You have not made sure that the soil is fertile to ensure that there are many of those roses with different colors that will be at the table. So it is also about the consciousness of men in the organizations that we are part of and that we are leading, to really understand that they have by birth been given that opportunity and that privilege to lead. And if we are going to allow women to take that space, it must be a conscious decision of male comrades in all institutions to then say that we do agree that women have a right to lead these prominent and very important organizations, especially organizations that are driving transformation, especially that transformation. If at the center of it, it must speak to women emancipation, women capacitation, and ensure that women are not just on the sidelines of social economic inclusion, but they are at the center. So you have to be conscious in ensuring that women are at the table and not just on the table and them being discussed in their absence.
I'm sure, Ms. Losi, as your role as president of COSATU, you keep a keen eye on unemployment, but especially unemployment when it comes to females. In the second quarter, our unemployment rate 32.9%, but female unemployment within that was at 35.7%, which is still significantly higher and of that of the rate of men, which is sitting at 30%. I know you sit in the Tripartite Alliance. I know you make your voice heard. But from a government perspective, what needs to be done in order to make sure that these stats are changing, not just within the public sector, but also that of the private sector?
Indeed, what we need is bold economic policies. Bold economic policies, especially where we're talking to sectors where women are dominant. We need to ensure that those bold economic policies speaks to the real transformation in those sectors, that the kind of jobs that we are creating are jobs that are not exclusion by their nature, that are not sectors that are by their nature, when they are created, are putting women on the margins, on the sidelines. So if we're going to address the issue of women unemployment, so as we want to address the issue of youth employment, we really have to pay attention to the kind of policy drivers that we are putting out there. Also, it is good to have progressive economic policies that we want to see, but the political will to implement and monitor the implementation of those policies, and that indeed they are driving transformation that we want to see, is also going to be key and critical. But I must also add that we have a role to play as trade union in South Africa, but also in the world, to monitor and ensure that ourselves, we are not just throwing expectations to government, but we're talking about our members. We're talking about our communities. And so we must also ask ourselves, what is the role that we are playing as progressive trade unions in ensuring that what we have won at the policy level does not just evaporate and we keep on making demands, but we don't monitor whether what we have already won is really being felt at the bottom of the ladder by those that must be recipients of such progressive economic policies in our country. But I must say that we really need bold economic policies, but importantly, the implementation is what matters at the end.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with Zingiswa Losi. To stay tuned. Welcome back to News in Focus. Again, thank you so much for staying with us, Ms. Zingiswa Losi. In your view, what barriers exist in achieving gender parity within the key sectors of the labor world?
The barriers, I think it links to one of the questions that you asked. When patriarchy is structural, when trade unions and key organizations are not refusing to transform, when we still believe that all institutions that women are part of are by their nature supposedly to be led by men, and women must be cheerleaders on the sidelines. So if we're going to talk about breaking the barriers, we must break the barriers of patriarchy in our institutions, be it churches, be it political organizations, trade union organizations, civil society organizations. There is no organization that exists where females are not part of. If you are going to grow your family, of course, you need women. And I must say that women have always played a leadership role and leadership responsibility, even during the times of our kingdoms. For those that are watching Ishaka Ilembe now, you will see that the Queen Mother has always been instrumental in the decision that King Shaka would take to lead his nation. That is why we are saying that it starts with breaking patriarchal norms and that which has been structured in our own institutions, to ensure that we are opening those doors, to acknowledge that women have a critical role to play. As others will say, you educate a woman, you educate the nation, and you empower a woman, you empower the nation. And so it is important that women are not just treated as sideline beings in the organization where their issues are at the center. We must first break the patriarchal systematic norms that are entrenched in our society. And by doing that, I think we will deal with all other ills that we find in our society, the issues of gender-based violence and femicide that is on the rise. But also we will be able to go back to fermenting and building solid family units that we need in order for us to address also societal challenges that we see.
It would be ignorant of us not to, of course, address the scourge, the pandemic, which is gender-based violence, and it comes into sharper focus during this month. In your view, what more needs to be done from a legislative perspective to make sure we're not just combating this pandemic, but we're eliminating it once and for all?
You know, we always proud ourselves of having great policies that should take us forward in addressing these ills of society. We need enforcement. We do not need any more of crafting more policies. We already have them. What we need is enforcement. What we need is the security cluster that is at par in addressing these issues and responding to these challenges. What we need is communities that are ready to work with the security cluster in our country to really address the pandemic that we see in our society. What we need is to build strong family units. As I've said just in the last response that I gave, what we see now is that we have child-headed households that have grown in proportions. We have single parent child, single parent headed households that have grown in proportions. We no longer have the family units that say that a child of my neighbor is my child, and that a child of my relative is my child, and I have a responsibility to groom and ensure that I protect these kids. We until we're able to go back to Ubuntu, I really think that it does not matter the policies that we have. It does not matter how good and progressive they are. If we're unable to nurture the children that we have, if we're unable to build formidable family units and rule of law in our country, then those policies are as good as us not having them. So we need credible law enforcement agencies in our country. We need civil society organizations that will be able to stand up and say, we are pointing out to the drug lords that are putting drugs in our communities and killing the fiber of society and the next generation. We are putting out there and saying we cannot continue to have males and females who have gone, on the rampage of destroying the young generation that is growing through human trafficking, through drug trafficking. We are seeing now females. I must raise this issue because it is an issue of concern, that we are seeing mothers now that are killing their own children that they gave birth to. We are seeing mothers now that are trafficking their own children. We are seeing mothers now that are allowing their young sons and daughters to start smoking drugs. This is a call for us to really respond to, that is saying something fundamentally has gone wrong into the fiber of society in South Africa. And we need men and women to act together for us to be able to build the society that we want to live in and that we want to see our children lead in the future. And we have to do it together. We have to work with government. We have to work with the state. We have to work with civil society organizations in our country to fight any thing that is going to take us backwards. We need to build a South Africa that we can all be proud to live in.
Ms. Losi, we've got just 2 minutes. How close or how far are we to having a female president in our country?
We are very close to having one, and there's nothing wrong for us to get ourselves there. But what we need is the political will. What we need is the support that is going to be needed when we identify women that can be able to take this country forward. There are so many. You just had a discussion now with Professor Thuli Madons. We have remarkable women in South Africa that have not just led in South Africa, that have led on behalf of South Africa in the international forums. We have incredible women that are in the United Nations on trade issues, on political issues, We have women in academias that are professors, doctors in science, in politics, that are representing this country, ideas of South Africa that can take this country forward. So women are ready. What we need is society to be ready to allow itself to be led by women. And I can tell you, Namibia has done it. Malawi at some point did it. South Africa can do it. But South Africans need to understand that women have led the 1956 pass laws strike, which has led us to a democratic dispensation that we're at. So it is not even a question that we must ponder ourselves on. It is a resolution that South Africa must take to take this country forward. Implement it. But political organizations must be ready, because the electoral system that we have is that of political parties. So we need political parties to understand that for us to take South Africa forward, women must be given an opportunity to lead this country. They are there. There are so many of them. They only need to be given an opportunity, and also to be backed up by political support, by support from our communities. The media must play its role. We do not want factions that are led by men to dictate the kind of a woman leader that must lead. Women themselves need to unite in order for us to have a female president that will represent the larger proportions of our society to take this country forward.
Ms. Zingiswa Losi, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us, and a happy Women's Day to you.
Thank you so much. Happy Women's Day to the women of South Africa.
That's Zingiswa Losi, the president of COSATU. And that's how we wrap up News in Focus. Of course, do have yourself, to all our ladies, our sisters, our mothers, daughters, happy Women's Day to you. Appreciate them, whether they're your wives, whether they're your sisters, your mothers, your daughters. Appreciate every single one of them. And don't forget in your prayers the women, the daughters of Gaza, the women and the daughters of Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and everyone that is facing oppression are in war-torn zones. They need your prayers, they need your thoughts at times like this. From myself, Ross Fidel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg, do have yourself a good weekend, but most importantly, a safe one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.